Hi everyone, it's Carrie. It's Saturday. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I have my second to last paper to write today, and I have not a lot of focus to do it, so we'll see how that goes. And then that's my last analysis paper, and then I'll have my big final project, and then I will be like pretty close to done with grad school. I'll have my master's in like a month, which is great. And I am job hunting pretty actively right now. I have an interview next week on Wednesday, so feel free to send me some good vibes. The school sounds very comparable to my like fieldwork site, which I absolutely love, and it sounds similar in a lot of the things that I really like about my site. So it seems like not only would it be like great I have a job, but like I actually have a job at a school that's a really good fit, and I could see the potential of like having a career at that school. And you know, if I end up at someplace I don't like for a year or two, like that's kind of what happens when you switch careers. You just have to be open to, or even like maybe just when you're first entering the workforce, you have to be open to what's going to happen and just be looking for opportunities all of the time. Those are kind of some life updates that I was not necessarily, that's not why I'm making this video, just so you know. I am making this video because somebody asked me a few weeks ago to talk about resources for AMAB non-binary people, so people who are assigned male at birth, who are non-binary, genderqueer. And here's the thing. What I would have liked this video to be was me saying like, yeah, I'm not going to talk about these specifically. I'm going to give you a ton of resources, people on YouTube, on Instagram, Tumblr, that provide these types of resources for you. And I've looked a little bit, not as much as I would have liked, honestly, just because of my own time commitments this time of year, and like finishing school and all that, but there really aren't a lot of resources, so I see why this person asked me. But I would prefer that people who are AMAB were speaking for themselves, and I think it's really important, not that everyone who's non-binary AMAB is feminine or trans feminine, but like this was kind of on a medical transition video, so I think a lot of the resources this person's looking for were in that realm, and I think it's really important that we elevate feminine voices and women in general, and I'm gonna like patriarchy, like it's really hard for women's voices to be heard, or feminine people's voices to be heard, or someone who is AMAB and is rejecting that, to society they're rejecting that privilege of masculinity. Like that's a voice that's not heard often enough. So with that being said, please, if you are that type of person, if you follow anyone anywhere on social media that has resources, I'm gonna ask you please like fill the comments up with resources from AMAB, non-binary people, for this person and for other people. But I also don't want to just say that. Like I'm gonna try to talk about this, acknowledging that this is not my area of expertise, it is not my own lived experience. So know that I'm sharing information that I have acquired from knowing, either in real life or online, people who are trans feminine, and some of them are binary trans women, some of them are non-binary people, that sort of thing. So please keep that in mind. And again, if you are AMAB, please like leave a comment, especially if you have resources or can recommend resources. I will say there are some non-binary type Facebook groups that I'm in that have a collection of AMAB, AFAB, intersex people that are pretty good, and like I can think of one in particular that's about physical transition, but there's discussion in there kind of frequently that even like the other people who are assigned male at birth like do not get the resources and the attention. I don't want to say attention, but there's just not the volume of information out there for them. So like seek those spaces out, but know that you're not alone if you're like somebody who's assigned male at birth and is looking for resources and is like, why can't I find anything? It's not just you. And I do even like, I follow some like Instagrammers who are like genderqueer people assigned male at birth and like a Tumblr, but they don't necessarily, they're great people, like to follow, like Jacob Tobiah, I think is how you say his name, but they're not necessarily talking all the time about resources. They're just talking about their lives. And like there's one person that I follow on Tumblr who like mostly just posts selfies, and I just like think they're kind of hot and attractive, and that's why I follow them. So anyways, I'm wasting time. So I kind of want to talk like a couple aspects of like managing your transition and being non-binary, because this I think we all have in common when we're non-binary, which is how are we managing like our levels of like dysphoria, physical dysphoria, social dysphoria when we're trying to get to a more ambiguous place, or some place that like our Western society doesn't already have a space that exists for us, and we're trying to express that. So while I will be speaking to more to non-binary people who are assigned male at birth, like this could still, you can kind of flip it if you're assigned female at birth, if that makes sense. So like medically, physically transition, but also like what types of social things can you do to interact with other people and just for yourself. So I'm gonna start there, because I think for a lot of people, whether they're trans or non-binary, it kind of starts with like doing little things for themselves. So haircuts or wearing a wig. And I've actually seen quite a few people who wear wigs that if they didn't tell me they were wearing a wig, it wouldn't occur to me. Like, they can look very good and authentic if that's something you're concerned about. And sometimes it might be a matter of, depending on where you're out, like, are you only out to yourself? Are you out to friends and or family? But not at work? Are you just out everywhere? You know, some of these might be things where you do them in some spaces and not others, and that's okay. Clothing, especially like, was that Target? I think it was Target, and they had shirts that were like, what did they call them? All gender shirts, maybe, like t-shirts. And I loved the idea. It was basically everything I hate about women's shirts and everything I hate about men's shirts, though. So like, I did not get one, but it had like the lower cut collar, like just kind of an odd kind of, I don't want to say odd, but like the cut was not a cut that I like for myself, but I really like this concept. And they were actually kind of like literally positioned in between the men's and women's sections. They were with like their Pride collection. It was Target. But finding like clothing that's maybe more subtly feminine, if that's what you're looking for, like those little like camisole kind of like tank tops you can wear under clothes, and you can kind of choose how much of that people do or don't see. Like, you might be the only one that knows you're wearing that, but it can be more affirming for you. Things like soaps, perfumes, where you're like purchasing those types of like beauty products. Stores like Lush and Sephora, if you have that kind of budget, have products that are aimed towards everyone versus just men or women. And there's a huge, I don't want to say explosion. I forget sometimes that I kind of run in specific circles, but there are a lot of people out there, like Instagrammers especially, and some YouTubers that are assigned male, and some are just cis men, but they are into makeup and they post about makeup and doing makeup, and that's something you can do from like very subtle, even to like Burt's Bees has like a line of like chapstick lip things, but they're tinted. So you can do something like that where people wouldn't necessarily even realize you're doing it, all the way to like full blown, it's very obvious you're wearing makeup, whatever your comfort level is with for your space. And if you are a little self-conscious about shopping in that section because you're afraid of like other people saying something or reacting weirdly, I will first say that I've been shopping in like all sections of stores for years, even before I really like came out, and I've never had that kind of issue. But they're like kind of department stores where it's sort of a free-for-all. So any like Target, Kohl's, H&M, like they're like dressing rooms are just, it's the same dressing room, Old Navy, where they're not split by gender, which is nice. And you can, if you're self-conscious, you can just take the attitude of like, oh, you're like shopping for someone else, it's a gift. You can even, like, if you walk into Lush and you're a little afraid that someone might judge you, you can say like, hey, I'm shopping for my niece, mom, make a person up. This is like, I think this is what they like, and then that person will sell it to you. You know, they'll kind of describe it, and you can make that decision if it's for you without them knowing, which seems weird, but I think being feminine, doing feminine things is viewed much more negatively than doing masculine things. It's a different story for me to walk into like a men's section and look at suits at Kohl's than it is for someone who's visibly perceived as male to walk into the women's section and like then pick something up and go into a dressing room. Somebody to give me a tip too at those kinds of places is like, we'll pick some stuff up from everywhere, and then like, even if you're not going to try it on, pick up something from like your, like what people would think was your section, make that the visible thing when you walk into the dressing room. But seriously, I think, having worked in the service industry, most of the time people are too busy doing other things to really care and pay attention. Again, I also live in a pretty like liberal big city, and so I might just be naive in that way because other people may feel or have experienced differently. So there are those kinds of things you can do, and those types of things exist. Like, So makeup tutorials, clothing type stuff. If you're like a taller, broader, more muscly type person, I guess you could possibly have, I have like the opposite problem with men's clothes, so I could see that maybe being a challenge. Like, it's a little bit more difficult to find like tall, big women's clothes that aren't cut weird. Like, I know I went from wearing like extra large t-shirts to medium shirts just from my top surgery. Everything else fit pretty much the same, but like, it can be awkward, so you might have to try some things on at first and know that extra large in women's is different than extra large in men's. Like, that's just the reality.